Welcome into the 16 Sports Extra podcast. I'm Jackson Neill. That's Sabrina Hoover. Got a lot going on today.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like I'm far away, but I'm right here, guys. No, it's been awesome to kind of get to, go to each fall camp, see what's going on. Today was the offensive line and defensive line. Over the weekend, it was running back. So get to see different position groups and also get to kind of feel for what this team's kind of gonna look like going forward.
That's right, Notre Dame football. We're going to start with that, but it's also the start of high school football.
Yes.
Practices are going on. We are recording this on Wednesday, so we're about 2-3 days in so far for these high school teams officially. We've been going out to different camps, feeling the energy with that. Coming up later in the podcast, I talk with, I guess it's Gannett's now, but formerly the South Bend Tribune. That's where you know him from, Austin Hough. Coach Hough, as we call him now. He
went big time on us.
He went big time on us. He's the editor for all of Gannett's high school sports here in the state of Indiana. So he still knows a lot about South Bend area, but also the state as well. He joins me later in the podcast. We're going to talk about the top 3 storylines for the local high school football scene. But before we get to that, Sabrina, I wanted to ask you, because you've been going to a lot of these practices. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we haven't been able to see too much. We got to see the first full practice, and then since then just stretching in the first 4 periods. But what's kind of stood out to you about a week or so into fall camp for Notre Dame?
Yeah, definitely. I know we talked a lot about the quarterbacks and running backs, but I kind of want to focus on today just a little bit because, we got to talk to the offensive line and defensive line. And I think, you just ran it actually in your story today, but just with this offensive line, Charles Jagasaw going down, and I think we've seen this a lot with these injuries. It's like you kind of have to interchange, who's going to, fill that specific role. And a lot of these players, younger guys are kind of coming into these roles. And it's actually interesting to me too, because they talked a lot about Sullivan Absher, and obviously he's young and his progression. And then Joe Rudolph mentioned, moving some guys, here and there. So I think it's interesting to see what they're kind of going to look like going forward. And of course they mentioned like Will Black, who's another freshman kind of going into this, he's been making some noise now in the fall camp scene. So with the offensive line and what this group can kind of do is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a really, really strong group.
Yeah.
I think that, it's crazy actually how many positions this kind of applies to, but my number one thing with Notre Dame this fall camp has been, okay, guys, like for fans, there's going to be names you don't recognize, but the people stepping in are super talented. It's like, just because you don't recognize a name, don't assume they're not as good as the previous person, because some of these guys are just incredible. And when you look at this offensive line, we've always seen this with Notre Dame, but it just continues right now with their newer players. These are some big guys.
Yeah,
like you just look at them and they have the size up front. I mean, you think of a player like Anthony Knapp. Yeah. That was a guy that this time last year we're like, okay, true freshman starting at left tackle at Texas A&M. How's this going to go? Well, now he's has a year of experience, still only a true sophomore, but he's going to be super reliable. Emil Wagner, you mentioned a couple other names. There already are the injuries with the Jagasaw injury, but I mean, this group as a whole, it's crazy to think just how consistent Notre Dame is up front.
Yeah, definitely. And then on the other side, the defensive line, we talked a lot about just to Al Washington. He had one of the best quotes about Junior, and he was like, his performance last season, when other guys went down, he said that he will never forget what he did, because he didn't really play in those first 2 games, but then he kind of stuck it out, had a tremendous season. And Al was like, the fact that he stuck it out and continued to just kind of improve and get better each game was huge for him. And then obviously losing guys like Howard Cross III and Bradley Mills on the line. But I mean, Junior talked about, Donovan Heinisch being, not as tall as Riley Mills, but still being a big playmaker and can really make a lot of plays, and a strong kid. And, Jason Onye, freak. I think you mentioned that word before. Huge guy. Rubio, they got all these guys in the defensive line as well. We talk about depth, and that might be one of the biggest ones for depth.
Yeah, I think although with the defensive line, the one spot on the line that that my whole theory of, okay, they got talent even if you don't recognize the names, the one spot on this roster where I just want to see it, I'm not saying I'm not completely bought in, is in the middle with the run stopping ability. Cross and Mills were so good. Now, I think they have players on the defensive line who are now, like you mentioned, freaks. These guys who are just athletically not normal in a good way. Like Bryce Young. Bryce Young is the guy that this year everyone in college football is going to have to learn his name, and that he's not the former Alabama quarterback, because this guy is a freak of nature.
Yeah.
So they have the talent, especially on the ends. Boubacar Traore is another guy I'd be thinking of. But it's in the middle. You mentioned Gabriel Rubio. I think he's going to be a big key for it. We've seen him in games before, but the key is going to be consistently, are they able to stop the run up the middle? I think Rubio, Heinisch, I think these guys can, but we'll just have to see that because Mills and Cross were super good. So that's the one area on the roster I'm kind of circling to see how they do week 1.
And you're right, it's kind of hard to replace those two guys, right? And it's funny, actually, you brought up the run game, and it's so funny. I forgot who asked the question about J Love, and it's like, how do you like to see just J Love just go into the middle? And every single offensive lineman was like, it makes our job easier. Like when we see him go up, we're like, all right, we're done.
Yeah, I mean, I could imagine blocking for Jeremiah Love is awesome because as soon as you miss a guy, you're like, well, he's just going to jump over him.
Yeah.
That's all that's going to happen.
Yeah, and I love that too, just like the chemistry of this offensive line, this defensive line. It seems like it's really gelled together. And, and then the biggest thing I feel like that we've talked about too is the young quarterback. So obviously they're going to be blocking, a younger starting quarterback here. So it's going to be interesting to see. Again, I know there's so many storylines heading into the season, but it's just going to be big to know, who's going to step up and who's going to make plays.
Of course. And if you want even more breakdown on the Notre Dame football fall camp right now, I was with Mike Berardino and Tom Noy from the South Bend Tribune. We did a podcast, the first episode of Pot of Gold for this season. You can also find that right here on WNDU.com. And then we're going to be talking about fall camp a ton on our shows on WNDU, as well as this podcast in the next episode next week. But for right now, we're going to transition to high school sports, the top 3 storylines in the South Bend area for high school football. Let's bring in Austin Hough.
The gridirons around Michiana. This is 16 Sports Extra.
I'm Jackson Neill here with Austin Hough of, I guess, formerly the South Bend Tribune and now just Gannett as a whole, but Indiana high school sports.
Yes, yeah. So sports content coach is my official title.
Yes, Coach Hough.
But I'm in South Bend. I live in South Bend. I've been covering high school sports, up here 7 years now. So technically no longer South Bend Tribune, but I'm very much ingrained in the South Bend world. You all know me. You've all seen me before on these airwaves. You know who I am.
Exactly.
So,
and you
just a title change. So.
Yeah, and you edit all of the high school sports content for Gannett throughout the state. Yeah. So it's like
I am an expert now. Statewide expert. Watch out. I've got some opinions now on the Evansville schools all of a sudden. So.
Exactly. Let's get on to Indy. But today we're still talking about South Bend because that's, of course, the area you still know best. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to bring you on for this segment today because I want to do, with high school football about to be, starting up with the games. We just had the first practices yesterday from the day we're recording this. I want your top 3 storylines kind of heading into this season. Where do you want to start?
Okay, let's do 2 in Indiana and then 1 up in Michigan.
Sounds good to me.
I will start with Mishawaka. I've got my eye on Mishawaka this year. South Bend area has not won a state football title in 20 years. We're 0-15. 0-15 since 2005. It's not been great. We get teams there, we can't win. So are we due? And that is the question I've been asking myself, I guess, the last couple of weeks. Are we finally going to get a champion? And if we do, who could it be? And I think the answer comes back to Mishawaka for me in that question. They were obviously very close last year in the semi-state final. Lost to East Noble 18-13, a very odd-looking score. And, they graduate a lot on defense. There's going to be a lot of starters to replace on that side of the ball. But if there's one thing I know about Mishawaka, they will rebuild that side of the ball. And they're always just a tough-nosed program. And to me, the reason why I have confidence in them is Landon Snyder at quarterback, Caden O'Neill at running back. You get a dynamic junior combo like that. 2 really, really good players that showed their mettle as sophomores last year. I mean, that's not easy to do. I think, from week 2 on last year when they beat Penn and they kind of beat them thoroughly, it was Mishawaka, Landon Snyder is legit, and these guys are going to be good. Obviously had a crazy tournament run, beat Northwood on a last-second play, and took care of New Prairie, and again, just seeing 5 points short of East Noble. So if there is a team I believe in Indiana that are on this side of the state that can get there, it's Mishawaka in 4A. They play in a loaded sectional. Northwood, Northridge is always lurking, St. Joe, but I think Mishawaka has the best chance to really make some noise this year. get down to Lucas Oil Stadium and maybe win this thing. So we'll see.
I was there yesterday for day one. That was my first stop of all the high schools I've gone to.
Will Hahn with the quote of the year already.
Oh man, we'll have to pull that one up. It's incredible. It's but just being out there. You mentioned the the returning production at quarterback and running back. Keith Kinder also happened to mention their center is back. So the way he put it to me was the 3 guys who touched the ball the most are all returning this year. When you have that type of returning production from a team that went all the way to semi-state, you're right. And this is a program that from talking with all of the players, sometimes you get the sense it's like these programs where they're always knocking at the door. They're always just right there. They're always getting real close. They're always, in competition for sectional titles, regional titles, semi-states. And it's just been a while since they've,
Yeah, they've only been to state the one time in 2012, or at least in recent years, 2012. But they have been a really, really good program the last 15 years.
That's a crazy stat to think that because they've been so good.
Yeah, and obviously they just run into, when they were in 5A, it's a little harder to get to state. 4A is a little easier in theory, obviously, but. And I think too, their conference this year will get them so prepared. You have Concord coming back from a tremendous year. Warsaw went to the 5A state championship last year. You have Northwood, who's always good. Northridge, you never they were bad. They were bad last year, 3-7, but could they rebound? Chad Epley's shown that he can have really good teams at Northridge. Plymouth had the surprise of the year last year. Their Goshen is on the upward trajectory. Wawassee's on the upward trajectory. I'm not saying that Goshen or Wawasee is going to win the NLC. It would be a shock to me, obviously. But they're going to be in a really good conference. They're going to play 5A schools. Warsaw has been in 6A in the past. These are really big schools that they're going to have to play. And Mishawaka could easily win the conference. History says Concord will not win the conference. There has not been not been a repeat champion since 2013.
Wow.
So it's crazy. The NLC is like the NFC East was for all those years, right? Where there's no repeat champion. Sorry, Concord, I guess. You get to play at Lucas Oil Stadium at least week 9 against Plymouth. But, I don't think you're going to win the conference championship. At least history says that. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. The last team to repeat was Concord. So they might be, I don't know, written in the stars. But when you've got such a good conference, those 3 at the top, Concord, Mishawaka, Warsaw, they're so good. All 3 of them could win the conference. They could all share it. Honestly, they could all beat each other probably and then be co-champs. So it's going to be a fun fall. The NLC, I think, top to bottom, is the best conference in the area.
Yeah, looking through those teams when you just routed them all off. I think Plymouth was the 3rd to last team you mentioned, and then we did multiple episodes last year talking about how that was a program on the rise, and you mentioned them probably
being 6th,
the 6th. That's it's a good
6th team in your conference if that's your 6th best team. Yeah,
usually a team like that's 2nd or 3rd or right towards the top. So you're so right with that. But that's going to be a crazy conference race to see.
Yeah,
and I really like that pick with Mishawaka because, like I said, I think this is at some point it's got to happen. They got to break through.
Yeah, I agree. So that's the first storyline.
Yes,
I'll transition to the second storyline, which is just really the NIC, and I think it's Elkhart and Penn, right? It's Elkhart and Penn, and it's no disrespect to New Prairie, who's going to be good again. They could easily win another 4A sectional with Reed Robinson leading the charge, and St. Joe. We'll see how their quarterback situation shakes out, but they're always kind of in the mix. Marion's always kind of in the mix, but it's Elkhart and it's Penn at the top of the NIC, and it's. Obviously they were probably at the center of the transfer world.
I was going to ask, did something happen between those 2 programs this summer?
They were really quiet this offseason, very quiet. Obviously Tayshawn Bardo was the biggest name going from Penn to Elkhart. Now he has to sit out 4 games.
Yes,
please 4 games.
Please explain this because we actually got this wrong, so I kind of wanted to react. Because
I
think everyone got this wrong.
For the record, I got it wrong to start. It's my fault. It's my bad. Hand up. I got it wrong.
I got it wrong as well. So just Austin, take us through and explain what the whole situation is.
Right. So under this new IHSA transfer rule, you are allowed to move one time, basically scot-free, before your junior year ends. So, you've seen guys who are sophomores, who just finished their sophomore year, they transferred this summer, and they can play right away because they are already a junior. Brayson Hurley going from St. Joe to Penn, Micah Gerald the quarterback going from Northwood to Elkhart. After you become a senior officially in the IHSAA system, like Bardo was, if you transfer, you have to sit out 30 days from the first contest date. So he transferred, mid-July, that's when it was announced. Technically, he cannot play in a game for the first 4 games, unless and they have kind of gotten rid of the appeal process because they just instituted this rule. Like that was kind of they basically wanted to save paperwork on a lot of these cases, But I don't know if he can necessarily appeal unless he can prove some sort of hardship. Like you have to be able to just like certifiably prove that like we moved to Elkhart or whatever, wasn't just for football basically. And I think it's going to be a little harder to get approved now because of this transfer rule. So from what I understand, he has to sit out the first 4 games. And so he won't play their opener against Concord, Northridge, and then I think they play Washington and Riley to start the NIC schedule. So, so obviously that was a big newsy thing. He's a Wisconsin commit. He's a very talented player, but he's not going to be on the field for the first 4 games. He will be available when they play Penn week 7.
That's October 3rd.
Circle the game.
Yep,
red Penn. Yeah, it's going to be a big one. But I wrote about this at the Tribune last week because I'm still dabbling in the writing. I'm an editor, but I still dabble in the writing. Are Elkhart and Penn ready to play 6A football? Like they are big boys, right? They're two of the 32 biggest schools in the state, 2 of the 10 biggest schools in the state. But last year they only get to play one 6A opponent on their schedule during the regular season as of this year, and that's themselves. So they don't really get a lot of tests, right? I mean, Penn plays Valpo, they'll play Mishawaka, Elkhart will play Concord, but other than that, like, and it's not a slight on New Prairie. They're a good team, but they're a 4A team. Like there's levels to this. Like you got to play big 5A, big 6A schools as much as you can to get ready. The NIC is just not providing you right now with that week in, week out challenge, unless something changes, right, in the next couple of years. So, are they ready to take that next step, right? Because you saw it last year. They got to the postseason. Elkhart lost a tough game to Fort Wayne Snyder, a good Fort Wayne Snyder team. It was 14-7. They didn't get blown out or anything, but they were 8-1. They were a really great team. Didn't give up any points, but the offense just wasn't ready to play a 6A team. Penn, they did win a playoff game because Lake Central was having a down year. As soon as they play Crown Point, 35-0.
I was there at that game. I mean, and I think in Crown Point last year was a really good football team.
Right.
But then again, like we're gonna get back to that conversation of the postseason where it's like you're in 6A, like everyone you play is a really good football team.
Penn was that Crown Point team for decades. Right? They were that team that everyone lost to in the postseason, right? And Elkhart is trying to become that. I'm not saying this is going to be like a passing of the torch moment here between Penn and Elkhart of who is like the best big boy on the block, but like, if Elkhart starts beats them again this year and starts stringing wins against Penn, overall with this new transfer rule, as Elkhart has shown, they're not afraid to use it. Even last year before it became a rule, they had some guys come in. Now they can get, sophomores and freshmen to come in and whenever they want. It's going to be interesting. I just think, like, are these teams truly ready to compete, at that level, at this true level where they can not just win, a sectional, but maybe a regional and get to state. Like,
and really start putting those,
right.
Get some real success with it.
Look, both programs under second-year head coaches now, Pete Reardon at Penn and Trayvon Curry at Elkhart, so they are building these programs, right? And so it's just going to be, to me, an interesting... Like, you might not get the answer to this question this year, but like in 2 or 3 years, will these programs be really, truly ready to compete against the big boys? And we're going to find out. So
it's such a good point, especially because one thing I can add to this is that Elkhart had a football night the other, about a week or so ago. And I went out there and I talked with Trayvon Curry and I just talked with some players on the team and things. And when you mention, Elkhart trying to take Penn's places, like the program, that was a really good example, like for me to see that program building in action. All, from like basically like little kids all the way up to the high schoolers, all being coached by Elkhart football coaches, all kind of being taught the same things, similar skills, obviously different skill levels, but then hearing stories like the 7th grade team just won a big championship at their age group, bringing the transfers in, they're already wearing the gear. Micah Gerald's already there talking with me saying it's a family. It's like you can see, like in my kind of ways, like a modern high school football program building steps. And you can see Curry kind of putting that in. And now, like you're right, it's just kind of like, okay, like let's get the results in the field to back it up as well, especially in the postseason because we saw it in the regular season last year.
One last note, I'm fascinated how Micah Gerald is going to play for Elkhart because he was I don't want to say we forget, but he was pretty good for Northwood those first 4.5 games last year, and then he got injured, right?
Well, I mean, when it comes to the Northwood quarterbacks last year,
it started the carousel.
I don't even know how many names there were.
It was like a we didn't start the fire, like Micah Gerald, but I didn't even remember the other one.
There was like 6 quarterbacks.
Landon Perry.
I think there's a stretch there where every week we would start off with, okay, who's a Northwood quarterback this week? Because it was somebody different.
We wrote just like write a story every week. Who is a Northwood quarterback?
Yeah, it was.
So
tough.
he was good. He was good last year, man, and he got injured. It's just unfortunate. So, how is he going to look at Elkhart? He's got the big 6'8", machine behind him basically, and should be fun. They could be really good again, and Penn with they've got a transfer quarterback in from Lakeshore, Landon Hall, from Michigan.
Yes.
So like he's a sophomore. You can hopefully see those guys battling each other out for at least 2 years here. So it's gonna be fun when those two teams play. Week 7, I believe that is October 3rd.
October 3rd at 7. I got it. Yep.
Circle the calendar. Rice Field. Yep. I'll probably even be there. Just maybe as a fan, take it in. So yeah.
All right, and then and speaking of Michigan, right there.
Yeah.
And Lakeshore, your third point, because I know it's up there north of the border.
Nice. Yes, Niles. Sorry, I don't know why I said nice. I meant to say Niles. Nice transition. Niles. Yeah, man. Niles. Remember them? Like they went to the state finals last year. Yeah. They lost to St. Joseph that first game, and I remember we were sitting there like, well, I don't know about Niles. 12 wins later, they're at Ford Field, and they steamrolled everybody other than like Portland in the playoffs. So I'm fascinated because I remember last year, we got done with the state finals, and Niles coach Scott Shaw, Hall of Famer, legend. He was like, we're probably a year ahead of schedule, and like. That blew my mind. I was like, you have a senior at quarterback, a senior at running back, a senior at the other running, like a lot of seniors on this. This is like the group that probably should have done it. He's like, no, like when we started out this quest, 5 years ago or whatever, this was like, we thought 2025 was going to be the year. Well, 2025 is here. The whole O-line is basically back, which I think is like huge.
For that type of, as an option team, having your offensive lines back is probably the most important thing.
No disrespect to either Talon that started at quarterback in 2023 or 2024, both named Talon. But like that was the biggest change last year was the quarterback, and they were able to plug it in and go, right? So the biggest thing for them is, they were in Division 4 last year. Now they're up in Division 3. The enrollment cutoff got them by like 17. Like it's like unbelievable.
That is,
like,
that's
right.
They
couldn't have like sent a couple kids to Brandywine, put it back down.
Like actually, let's redistrict real quick. That one street.
Right. Yeah. So they're up in Division 3, and that is obviously going to be different for them because Division 4 again a little easier. In Division 3, the St. Joseph is likely a team that will be looming, and they lost to them in Week 1 last year. They play them again in Week 1 this year. That's going to be a great game at Niles in the city of Four Flags on August 29th. So I'm not going to deny or doubt Scott Shaw until the season gets going. So I'm going to take his word for it. But they are a great program now, and I am fascinated to see how they kind of handle. This new target, even the bigger target on their back than there was last year. I also just love the fact that their schedule sets up where Paw, their biggest conference roadblock the last couple of years is Week 3. That always was the conference championship game the last 2 years. And then Edwardsburg, their biggest rival, is the final week of the regular season. First week of the IHSAA postseason. Week 9, Michigan, Niles, Edwardsburg. I saw that schedule, and I'm like, man, that's a good and a bad thing because you're like, I want to really cover Niles, Edwardsburg because that game has been great the last however many years, whether it be the regular season or the postseason when they've played. So it's going to be loaded. That's going to be a big game to look for, last week of October, second to last week of October. So I just think it's going to be very fascinating to kind of see how they handle and how they move on. And they're going to have a whole new offensive weapons, basically. To Brendan Olson is the only guy on offense, I think, that's a weapon that came back. He's their tight end. They don't throw the ball much. So I don't know. He's a tall guy. He plays great defensive back, but he doesn't catch many passes. So I'm fascinated to see what they do, and I think they're going to be kind of fun to watch in that regard because I don't really know what to expect other than Scott Shaw's those words in the back of my head being like, we're going to be better, even better next year. You got to Ford Field last year. I don't know how you could even be better. I guess win it, but So I'm excited for Niles.
I mean, the one stretch I could see, for them, in terms of build, we talk about building a program, right? And
Yeah.
okay, how can success kind of carry over from year to year? The stretch, when I look back at their schedule, was kind of that October 11th of last year. They went at Edwardsburg and beat them 21-14.
Yeah.
Next week they beat Plainwell by 56. But then the next 4 games after that, at Paw Paw, 21-0 win. The next week playing Paw Paw again, 42-14. Then they play Edwardsburg again, 21-0. And then they had that crazy game against Portland, which they won.
One of the best games of the year.
One of the best games high school football games I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And that stretch, you mentioned Edwardsburg and Paw Paw, kind of like the two teams that were, they're always kind of battling out.
Yeah.
They played both of them twice in like a month span. And beat them both times, shutting out.
Beat them better the second time.
Beat them better the second time for each of those games, and then also getting that crazy postseason win over Portland. That's the type of stuff that they did not finish off the season with the win in Ford Field, but those are the types of games where it's going to get to be October of this year, and you have your back against the wall. You're down 7-0 to Paw Paw or Edwardsburg or somebody, and you're like, what do we do? Oh, we're Niles. We can win this football game.
Right.
Those are the kind of program-changing stretches right there.
Yeah, and it would just be really cool. I know Scott, I don't know when he's going to retire, but obviously he's getting up there in age. I think this is getting near the end. This was probably going to be his last head coaching stop. And I think he thinks he can win a state title. I don't think he would have come back after last year if he didn't think he could win a state title, to be honest. That's just my personal opinion. I have no insight on that. Please do not direct quote me on that. But that's just my gut. Because you go to state, and you're getting older as a coach, you probably think, okay, this might be it. He was never doubted. He's been there. So I think they're going to be another fascinating watch. I wish they were in Division 4 because it might be just a little easier to get there. Division 3 will be a beast.
They like the challenge. I know Scott likes that challenge though.
Yeah, I'm sure he's not backing down from it. It's just going to be fun. So I think there's a lot of interesting things going on in the high school football world. I know you'll have plenty of coverage on WNDU.com coming up in the next couple weeks. SouthBendTribune.com.
I was about to say,
I'll plug SouthBendTribune.com still, even though I don't work for them technically. I oversee it though.
Exactly.
It's
so
like
if
my
you're
baby.
So if you're seeing your new high school reporter Kyle Smedley, he's been awesome. He's got
a great mentor. One of
the best mentors. He's put out some great content. And when you read it, you'll know, hey, if there's a mistake in it,
it's probably from me. Yeah, you'll also probably read it and be like, wow, this writing is so much better than the other guy. So
exactly. Right. You can be thinking that too. But make sure to check that out on the South Bend Tribune. Austin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Appreciate it, Jackson, as always.